You're gonna get caught in that crazy traffic.
Mic test, mic test.
No, like,
Mic test one, mic test one, check one.
Just like that. Okay.
I mean, I don't know what I was.
Mic test one, mic test one.
Yeah. You know, I want to do it. Yeah. Luckily, I think at the time we were.
Oh, right after.
Well, it was 4 hours ago. Oh, I was in class. So 4 hours outside my car. Okay, everyone.
Last.
Let's find seats. We'll call the meeting to order here in a second. I will. My brother really. But now he's going to take over. Okay, seats, please. Yeah, afternoon, everyone.
That's it, everyone. Getting started.
Yeah, let's keep going. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and kick off at 2:10. We've got a couple of guest speakers lined up, a few things to discuss, and other things we'll try to squeeze in as we can. We're passing out agendas now. Please register for attendance here. In the future, we're going to start keeping track of this just so we can kind of identify what an average quorum is like. So just be on the lookout for that. That QR code to take you to a link for the meeting. We'll try to leave it up throughout the whole meeting. And Phyllis, I got you for this one. Outstanding. So I guess we'll just dive into the agenda.
So first, we have a couple guest speakers today. They're all candidates running for some political office. Is Stephanie Draper would like to speak and talk about her campaign and her stance on public transportation. And maybe you could talk about how you would react if if there was legislation filed this session that would cut DART sales tax funding by 25%. That would also be great. So come on up.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Draper, and I'm running for State Senate District 12. And it covers a little bit of Dallas County, a little bit of Tarrant County, a little bit of Denton County, and all of Wise County. So majority of those areas do not have transportation out there. And that is really sad, especially as how big this area is growing. And if we want to stop some of the pollution, we definitely need to make sure that we invest in our transportation department. As far as you said, what was that question?
Oh, if legislation were to get filed that would cut DART's funding by 25%, how would you react? What would your stance be?
Okay. I can't really answer, but I can tell you what I see. They brought in rideshare into the Tarrant County area, the Denton County area, and definitely over where I live at, close to Wise County. We don't have transportation out there. And in order for you to get transportation, you need ride share. And we all know ride share is very expensive. So I would say, I would be really upset at the simple fact is that we don't have the transportation out there, one. And number two, they shouldn't be taken away. They should be adding to. So I 100% support transportation because it's very needed, because there are people that need transportation that do not have vehicles, and especially our students in these universities. A lot of them, first-time students, do not have their vehicles anyway, and they need that transportation. Arlington is one of the areas too that's very congested, and they need transportation out there, but they chose not to have it out in that particular area as well. So that is something that I would definitely be wanting to push a bill that has transportation out.
So you want to see DART or its agencies like it expand into territory?
Yes, we need to expand because the areas are growing so rapid in North Texas that have y'all been driving on Interstate 114 or even 635, and you know, it takes, if you work in Dallas, you gotta leave home an hour and a half just to get there and get there on time because we have construction going on as well. So to help with some of the pollution that we have, we need to have more transportation. We need to invest in making sure we have updated transportation as well.
So are there any upcoming events you have for your campaign that you'd like to promote while you have our audience?
Yes. Tomorrow at 12 to 3, we'll be having a block walk over in Louisville. You can contact me through draperfortexas.com. We will also be having another block walk that will be happening. Right now, we have one right now over in Roanoke in Trophy Club with Denton County. We have several events. If you want to know how to jump into one of these events, you can follow me on Facebook. It's Stephanie Godin Draper or Stephanie for State Senate District 12. You can reach out to me there, and you can also reach out to me on Stephanie for Texas State Senate on Instagram as well. And I just got on the TikTok, so I'm learning how to maneuver that too. But we definitely need your support. I have my campaign manager here, so she can definitely answer any of the other questions that you may have as far as with transportation on my stance on that. But I can tell y'all, as a person who first learned how to get on a bus when I first moved to Dallas like 100 years ago, that was a very interesting experience, and it is such a vital part of what goes on in our cities, and is a very needed thing. And we definitely need to make sure that we invest in it, and we definitely need to make sure that we support you 100% because it's needed. Okay. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure we all have some stories, but we've dug in on how.
Okay, so how do you feel about the legislature trying to change it and take it away?
But I think the big thing I was talking about.
Do we have a mic?
We have
Yeah.
our mic.
Oh, yeah, it's on.
Okay, we've got some people online.
Okay.
So what we've seen is Plano is pushing for a bill that would take 25% of the 1% sales tax, so a quarter of the penny that goes to DART for their own purposes. They don't have a plan for how they would use it for mobility or anything. And inside their proposed agreement, they want to, or proposed legislation, they could even go to cars, roads, etc., which seems antithetical, right? There's only so many more cars we can put in. And so that's kind of why we're against it, because it takes away DART's ability to operate at full capacity. And there's no guarantee they would use that money for walkability, transit, etc. That's what we're concerned about.
You know, I agree with you because we don't know exactly where they're putting the money at, because you look at our public schools. So I'm quite sure you all are aware of what's going on with our public schools, with them trying to take the funding away from public schools and put it over into the private sector. So y'all remember me saying something about Wise County? There is absolutely no type of transportation out there whatsoever. So if the kids wanted, the parents did want to send their kids to a private school, how they gonna get there? I know they have a lot of horses and stuff, but how are they gonna get there?
Exactly.
You know, that's the question. So in certain areas, and I know they might not be able, and that's something probably have to look at in the future about getting some type of, even if it's a little, they call it a little short bus, right? Have it going out there in that way that people that want to go to the rural areas, they need to be picked up that way, right? Because sometimes you need to get picked up to go to the airport or go to the grocery store, especially for our elder people that are not driving. And my kids told me they're gonna take my license away from me and I'm not gonna be driving for too much longer. I'm like, okay, I haven't hit anybody lately, but but I will be one of those ones that will probably be using the transportation system. So I'm like, if I'm thinking about what's happening in my future, we definitely need to be thinking about what's gonna happen in the future, because this place, North Texas, I'm telling y'all, it is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and the traffic is horrible. And we definitely need our school buses. We need our buses out there to make sure that we get these people where they need to go, and they need to be able to get on those buses and feel safe while they're on the buses. And that's one thing that I want to ask too. How about the safety?
I've had mixed experiences, but I'll say this. I know that if you look at the stats, objectively, public transportation is safer than driving in your own car, no matter how, even if sometimes there's some weird person on the train or on the bus or whatever. In the back of my mind, I know the statistics. I know transit's safer than driving because you don't have the risk of car accidents, right?
Right, and maybe out of this.
Yeah. So.
Thank you.
So I think probably the key thing with safety is that people, we do all have those mixed experiences of getting on the bus. That's just the part of living with other people. But the real part that I think a lot of people forget on is you drive on, 820, on 114. I literally just made a trip to Fort Worth today and back. I drove there and there was a car wreck literally on the way back here. And you know what? That meant somebody got hurt driving. Somebody, somewhere is having to go to the hospital right now because of that. I think day to day, I hop on the train to go to work. I take the bus, whatnot. Never had an issue other than maybe somebody being weird. This one person now is, probably dealing with medical bills, medical issues, and this is a daily occurrence. There's traffic day to day because of accidents. There is, people losing their lives, getting hurt. That is what I think of when I think of safety. That's where my mind goes.
If our budget gets cut, it's going to be more unsafe, if that makes sense. Like, if they don't have money to pay, like, our police officers and our fair enforcers, then it's just not going to work. Like, I don't know what they expect.
I definitely understand exactly what you're saying, and I would push for a bill to make sure that not only do we fund it, we need to definitely invest. Now, I had the opportunity to go to the DNC in August, and I've never been to Chicago ever, and I never have been able to get on those trains. And that was I'm sorry, Texas. That was my first time getting on one of those transit trains. And it was an experience. And I'm just looking at everything. And I'm like, we could do that here. we literally could do that here, And I'm just looking at the details of how, especially downtown Dallas, is horrible. My GPS, sometimes I think she was going through menopause or something, but she was really having a problem telling me how to get to one place to another. But if you had the green lines, if you had those trains, those railroads that come through there, that would help. That would help with the traffic jams. That would help with people like me that just can't get there. I don't care, because she just does whatever she wants to do. But that would definitely help relieve some of the pressure of the traffic. That would help with our environment, with all this pollution, because everybody does not have one of those Teslas. You know, we just don't. A lot of us, like myself, I love my gas one, even though I know it's not great for the environment, but we need to think about the future. And for the future, as big as we're getting, we're gonna have to wind up kind of bringing in some other things like that. And I think that would be a great investment. It's probably going to be $1 billion. And I think Elon Musk should sponsor that since he's sponsoring everything else. That would be great. And it will also put revenue back in our cities, in our counties. That would help.
Both a comment to answer the question as well as a question itself for you. So right now, this summer, just like every year, Governor's office approved $100 billion for highway expansion, highway maintenance, highway widening. And while we're at the state level, we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars. DART and other public transit agencies don't receive any funding from the state. The lion's share, about 75% of our funding, comes from the sales tax, and that's why we're very protective of it. That last 25% comes from revenue from tickets, which is small, federal grants. And so the federal government's pitching in, the local government's pitching in, but the state, who is spending hundreds of billions of dollars on highways, isn't. And so I've been part of groups that have tried to change, lobby for legislation that in the past hasn't gone through, has not had the support to take a portion of that gas tax or some other funds that are solely dedicated to highways and state roads and put that towards transit. Because if we compare what the expenses are, there's a ton of sources for, there's a highway patrol funded by the state. There's the state highways, state roads. There's a ton of state funding for car infrastructure. But when you look at DART not only has to cover their own operations, they also have to cover their own capital, building, construction. They also have to cover their own security. So there are a plethora of statewide agencies, multiple agencies to cover every aspect of cars, but DART is alone with no support from the state in covering the entire experience. So what would your perspective be on opportunities at the state level to possibly provide more state funding for public transit?
When was the last time you was on a toll road?
I have not owned a car in the last 3 years,
Okay.
but actually in the last month, because DART Express buses, I took the DART Express bus to Addison, and they take the North Toll Lane.
So that counts. So I was told, and I'm gonna have to do a little bit more deep dive into this, that the toll roads is not even owned by Texas. So why are we, it's supposed to be a Spanish company that's out of our country that they're telling us to pay them to ride on our roads that our tax dollars already take care of. So this is what I think, and it's just my opinion. I feel like people would actually pay their toll bills, if they knew it was going towards transportation. I think that the amount of money that they get from us, because it's a lot, and Lord knows I take a lot of tolls. If a portion, even if it's 2% of that money that they collect goes towards transportation, that would help relieve some. And you have a fight in this race. Now, as far as the legislation, that is something that we would definitely have to lobby for. We definitely would have to lobby to make sure that transportation is not on an island by itself, because I know how hard it is to get grants. It's like you got a lot of red tapes to go through, but that is something that the current people that are in legislation office right now, they need to take a deep dive and start looking at this, because this North Texas is growing more and more, and we need to do new things in order for us to make sure that we still have transportation in the future.
So,
We're right at time.
yeah.
Okay.
So do give like a last second promotion of yourself if you want. Yeah, real quick.
Real quick, okay. I have been in Texas for 22 years. I'm sorry I didn't address that with y'all first. I've been here for 22 years. I am a Louisiana native, so don't hold that against me, but I love Texas. And I am running on faith, family, and freedom. But let me tell y'all something. I'm one of those candidates that is for the people. I believe in putting the people first before party. I believe in making sure that our public schools get fully funded. I believe in making sure that we have affordable housing because, you know, if we have affordable housing, people can actually afford to go on transportation as well, right? So that is one of those things that I am very passionate about. I'm for the people. Don't forget, October 21st is early voting. Please, please, please go early vote. October 21st through November 1st. November 5th is election day. Remember to vote for Draper for Texas. Please go to the website, draperfortexas.com. And also remember to vote for me. Just vote blue all the way down the ballot because basically you have a lot. Let me tell y'all, and I know I'm pushing time. We have a lot of great candidates that's on this list that actually care. You got real people that are invested in making sure that our state change. In order for us to go into the future, we have to adapt to change and we have to make the change happen now. We cannot continue on going back because I'm not going back. I'm moving forward, right? Because when we get older, we need to make sure we have things in place, and I want to make sure that I'm on the right side of history. So remember me, Stephanie Draper for Texas, and I need volunteers to be hitting the blocks and knocking on these doors to get people out to go vote. Thank y'all for inviting me, and I appreciate everything. And let me know if I can do anything else.
Thank you. And I know a lot of you live in her district. A lot of you are in the Carrollton, Addison area, and that covers her district. So take everything she said into consideration. You all like public transportation, so just keep that in mind when voting starts.
How much longer are you gonna be? Okay, cool. So
Cool.
she's a campaign manager.
Can I give you a fun fact?
Give us a fun fact.
Chicago is built on grid system.
Correct.
Start was built on a spoken wheel,
Mm-hmm.
and they had to change the 80s. You know, they did the cross towns. So it's going to take, who's the rich guy? The Tesla guy. It's going to take him to put us on a grid system. Yes, but you're there. She was exactly right. We need to upgrade and look at things differently.
Couldn't agree more. All right. Yeah, Rachel Mello has come into the room. And if she wants to speak on public transportation, her campaign, or whatever she wants, she's more than welcome to right now if she's free and wants to. Yeah, she's walking up. All right. Otis, what's your question if she walks up?
Not a question, but a quick statement. Even electric cars aren't that great for the environment because according to some articles that I've done research on, a lot of the electricity comes from non-renewable energy that pollutes the environment. So even electric cars are polluting the environment.
Yeah, that is correct. Electric cars are better than gas cars, but public transportation is like the greenest.
Way better.
Walking is the greenest, but our state is not built for walking. So we have to do something different. My name's Rachel Mello. I am running for Texas Senate District 8. So that is most of Collin County. They gerrymandered out Frisco and Richardson. So, but I have the rest of it, as well as Hunt and Rains County. And I was asked to come here today because of some of the conversation that has been started by the city of Plano about reducing their contribution to the DART system. And so in my day job, I am a public school teacher. And I am still a public school teacher during the week and campaigning on the weekends. But as a public school teacher, one of the things that I have learned over the last 17 years in my career is that public education is the intersection of all public policy. And so when I hear Plano say that we want to reduce funding to the DART system, I immediately go to how is that going to impact my students? Okay, because we use DART for our homeless students, our McKinney-Vento students. A lot of school districts provide them with DART passes, especially if they live out, if they have moved outside of the district. They have a right under federal law to continue to remain enrolled in their home, in their school, to provide stability to the family. And so if we're not able to provide school transportation through a school bus or some other kind of arrangement, we can provide them with the DART pass and help get them back and forth to school using the public transportation system. So that's an area that's going to impact our students. Our disabled students, as part of teaching them life skills, we teach them how to use public transportation. And when I taught in South Dallas at the charter school, one of the field trips that we took a whole group of kids. We rode on the bus and we went and taught them how to buy your ticket, to use the train, to use the DART system. And so that's just part of teaching our children how to function in our society in an urban area, and be successful. And when our young people, if they have jobs at 14, 15, 16, because some of them do, they're not able to drive themselves, but they can use our public transportation system. And so when I hear that might be a problem, I get really concerned, because that's going to impact these vulnerable populations. So that's kind of why I'm here, and I'm happy to hear from you. And I told them when I walked in, I'm going to sit through the meeting, so I want to hear what's going on and what your concerns are. And I'm happy to take your questions if you have any.
Thanks for coming down to speak. I have a question about, so you said your district covers McKinney, so part of North Plano, it sounds like? All of Plano?
Allen, McKinney, all the way up to Anna, Melissa.
Okay, so I want to talk about those north of Plano, even though this is South area, since we have you to talk about this. So yes, it's granted that that part of North Texas, very sprawled, very low density. So it's very difficult to get the common modes of mass transit that we may think of, like trains or rail. But an example I saw recently was, I went on a Greyhound trip. Long story, won't go into it, but I took a Greyhound all the way up to Iowa. And I did that to kind of experience, just to see what the less urban parts of America, how they travel, and some trip cases that I might not have thought were realistic or possible before. And one of the trip cases that surprised me was quite common. There were people taking Greyhound from downtown Dallas to McKinney.
Okay.
And there were some cases where on my return trip, I took Greyhound again from Iowa to Dallas. This time it went through Denton. There were people boarding every stop in Denton, Louisville, Capel. People got on the Greyhound to go to Dallas.
Wow.
And so here's why I bring that up. I think a lot of times we get very boxed minded when we're thinking about what can and cannot be done with public transit and mass transit. Have you or anyone in your office, and if the answer is no, or you haven't thought about it, then that's why we're here. We're happy to have these conversations. But have you thought about any out of the box or out of the car solutions to introducing more mass transit and public transit to Collin County that go beyond just the traditional rail that we often think about?
Okay. The short answer is no, I haven't, but I can speak to a little bit of that, because I know that we're building, I believe it's the Silver Line going into Plano. And beyond that, you get into the McKinney and the Allen area. And McKinney has their own transportation system. Allen has a bit of a conundrum, right? Because they have maxed out their sales tax revenue, and they have invested in economic development in their area, and they've done well. Allen's doing great, but because they've maxed out their sales tax allotment, they do not have the ability to raise the 1% to buy into the DART system and have it go through there. So I'm not sure, and it's kind of something that I am puzzling on, is how do we help them and the region as a whole, because Collin County is booming. Hunt County is growing at a rapid rate, that whole area. And what we have now with just the cars and just the highway and like the traffic is insane. One of the common complaints is how many people are on our surface streets trying to bypass 75 when it gets backed up, just because there's people everywhere. And it is a problem looking for a solution for sure. And what that looks like is, that's why we're talking, right? I did hear from the UTD students, because they're very concerned about what's happening with public transportation as well. And you know that I have a senior in high school. And so I am looking at colleges, I'm looking at the cost, I'm looking at putting him on my car insurance, I'm looking at all of those things right now, because that's the stage of life that I'm in. And I know that when I'm looking at a college campus, I'm looking at their public transportation system. Like, does he have to have a car? How much is it going to cost to park it in Boston? What if we didn't have a car? So those are real conversations that are going to be related to recruiting students to go to these universities in our local area, and how is it going to impact them? And what's that going to look like? Do we have the space to park all these cars?
Yeah.
No, we don't.
Oh, yes, I'm glad you picked that up.
No, we don't. We don't. We don't have the space to park all these cars. How many, like when I was a freshman in college, freshmen weren't allowed to bring a car to campus. So if there was no public transportation system, you got dropped off and you were stuck, or you found some friends real fast. Somebody who had a car who was an upperclassman. So like these are things that impact our everyday life, and they impact our everyday decision making. And I don't think these are the real conversations that they're having in Austin from the perspective of people who have to have these services. And that's kind of what I'm looking to bring to the table, is real conversation. Like what we have in Austin right now and what we have in our legislature, they are so far removed from real people. They don't understand. And collectively, they do not understand what real life is like. And they're so insulated. My opponent, like, she's not out in the community having these conversations. She is not interested. She has her agenda and what she wants to accomplish, and what matters to the rest of us isn't really that important. And so that's why I'm here, to hear what your thoughts are, and I would like to be your voice in Austin, and help as much as I'm able.
And so I'm a senior in high school as well, and I'm also looking, I'm also like considering doing like a short thing in community college with Collin College before transferring. And I know like some of the places in Frisco and Plano, they have no access to DART at all.
Correct.
And I don't have a car. I don't have my license yet. And I feel like that, and especially the concern that you brought up, that really one thing with like transit, that's things that are deterring me from like really good places because I mean I can't. That's tuition is already so out of control
Correct.
nowadays, and so what do you think that people on the ground, like students and prospective students, can do to kind of campaign or lobby for transit with that connects to these universities?
Well, the one thing that young people can do that they haven't done before is show up and vote. Because if you show up and vote collectively and you vote for the things that are important to you, then you will be noticed. People who are in office are not investing a lot of time in young people because young people historically do not show up at the polls. If you want the things that are important to you to be addressed, then you and all of your friends, whoever is eligible to vote, needs to go vote. And early voting starts on Monday. So that's the thing. You want your voice to be heard. You have to make it. You have to make it important. Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, of course, that way in the back. Yeah.
Lou, first of all, thank you so much for coming out here. As someone who grew up in the very rural parts of your district, it's really feels good to see you coming out here and, you know, hearing about the issues facing us out here in the more urban parts of your district. So, like I said, as someone who I grew up in Caddo Mills, you know, spent a lot of time in Greenville, and even now I spend a lot of time, not in your district, but way out in Corsicana, so in a lot of very rural areas that, as cool as it would be, probably realistically you're not seeing any kind of transit services anytime soon.
Mhm.
And I would just want to ask, what would you say to your more rural constituents, you know, in Greenville, Commerce, out in those areas, when you push for spending more on transit in cities, when they feel, well, I'm not going to benefit from that? You know, what would you say to them to convince them that it's important for everyone?
A rising tide lifts all boats. Like, what we rise and fall together, and that's what we're seeing in our state. We are seeing a handful of people who are taking everything that we have worked for and using it for their own benefit. Okay, and we need to work for the common good. And I firmly believe, it's why I'm in public education, that a rising tide lifts all boats. Because as we push each other higher, we demand better. So I participate in a robotics program, and one of the things that one of the values that we have, it's called cooperation. And it's this hybrid of cooperation and competition. It's like our team competes against these other school districts in the area, right? And we want to win. We want to be the best. We want to win. But I don't want to beat the other school team because they had a bad day. I want to beat them on the day when they're at their best, because I want to know that I'm the best, right? I don't want to win on a fluke. I don't want to win on a bad ref call. I don't want to win because your robot battery died. I want to win because my team was better. And right now we're not being led by people who believe in that. Right now we're being led by people who are win at all cost, and they don't care about who they step on along the way. And so rural Texas has a piece of my heart. My family, 5 generations in Falls County. Like, my dad still lives there. My sister still lives there. That is a rural area. If you're not familiar with Texas geography, it's outside of Waco Temple area. Little tiny town called Lott, Texas. The county seat is Marlin. Like, super high poverty rate. Lots of issues there. My grandparents live in Bullard, which is in Cherokee County. And they live right off of Lake Palestine in that area, in a an area that it's mostly mobile homes that have been brought in and set up. And, you know, it's high poverty, high elderly population. And they do need things. And I would love, you know, in a perfect world, to be able to provide everything that they need. And that vision is so far from what our reality is that it's just hard. Okay? But when we're talking about opportunities and providing those, at the end of the day, a rising tide lifts all boats. Okay? And we need to look at what our urban centers need, for sure, but we also need to look at our rural areas. And when we look at that, the area where I see it most clearly is when we talk about water, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but when we talk about water, right? We need water in our cities because people need water. But we need water in our urban areas because agriculture needs water and people need food. And so, like, how do we balance those? That's one of the things that we do as public educators, is we hold those things in tension. And we recognize that both of these things are legitimate. And we need to be working towards both of these goals. And it's not always easy. And sometimes we mess it up. And we go back to the drawing board and start over. And we need people who are willing to go back to the drawing board and start over when they mess it up and not just dig in. Does that make sense?
Howdy, my name's Tyler. I'm not in your district, unfortunately, but I would vote for you. A couple thoughts on like transit, serving transit to rural areas. Now, normally we're against kind of like Uber ride sharing, like subsidization, because fixed route service works better in dense areas. However, there's a lot of studies that show like point-to-point travel can be pretty usable for people who live in less dense, more urban areas. And even cities like Longview, which only has like 80,000 people and they're in the middle of nowhere, they've got a bus system.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I think transit may not look like DART here with the second longest light rail system, right? But they could start with you could start with advocating for funding for point-to-point subsidized travel, as well as, oh, well, we can get a couple buses that run through downtown. That might actually, because I agree with you, rising tides lift all boats. And I think when somebody says, well, we don't have transit in the rural, oh, well, we can get you a couple things. Just let us know what you need.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of nuanced. Love point-to-point for rural. Me personally, I don't speak for data, but thinking about scaling, then buses are the next step and stuff. So.
Well, and I think too, for the District 8 region specifically, the population is growing so fast that the need for expansion in a fixed rail or a fixed system is going to present very shortly. So.
Yeah. So we are running low on time. If I'm doing, yeah. So I want to give you the opportunity to tell everyone your name again, your website, your maybe any future events. Go for it. Whatever you want. Closing.
Okay. So my name is Rachel Mello. I am running for State Senate District 8. For those of you who don't know, my opponent is Angela Paxton. So I could have led with that, and sometimes I do. But what I have found is that, you know, people stop listening. They're like, oh, sure, I'm voting for you. And they don't hear anything else I have to say. So, you know, yes, we all have strong feelings about her. Exhibit A. So, but yes, that is who I'm running against. If you know anyone who lives in my district, please let them know that I exist. I am a public school teacher, so during the day, I am not on the campaign trail. I am in the classroom. And so that puts me at a disadvantage as far as, you know, getting my name out, making sure people like attending events. Good job scheduling this on a Saturday. My website is mellowfortexas.com. That's also my handle on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. So you can find me there. I do have a fundraiser coming up this week. It is the only fundraiser I have had in my entire campaign. So I am hoping to have a good turnout. We have a guest, an artist coming in from Nashville. His name is Trey Taylor. Trey is the youngest African-American artist with a recording contract in Nashville area. So he is coming to help me fundraise to get us in through these last few weeks. And I hope that some of you will come and have some fun with us. All right. Rachel Mello, mellowfortexas.com. Thank you.
Isn't it refreshing to see politicians talking about transit being supportive, especially the past 3 meetings I've been highlighting the anti-transit politicians. I mean, I'm about to start doing that. But it is just so nice to finally hear some positive words spoken about public transportation and about DART. I know a lot of our members are in Plano, so I just ask you take this into consideration. Even like some of you in Wiley, I know SD8 like covers. Is that correct? Like some of Wiley area too? Yeah, it is. Okay. And I guess I didn't know this, but does donating this late into a campaign still help? Okay. Okay. I thought I'd missed the boat with some candidates I'd like to support. No.
And you go to early vote, and that's what it's like. That takes off our list. Don't have to contact. So, through you get the whole.
Awesome.
It's also very fine, this a variety of things, because this Senate District 8 and Senate District 12 are well financed by the Paxtons and the Abbotts. So I don't know about Mello, but I know relative to Stephanie, that is how some people look at whether they'll give to you or not if you have a lot of money. And I never understood that, because okay, how do you get a lot of money if you're looking at them who have money, you know? And it's been really funny, but they have told us that she's not in competition because she has no money. Well, but we think way outside the box. So we're going to beat him without all of his millions because we've been touching the people. And so, yes, anytime it's a good time to donate.
So yeah, if a lot of you I know are not in competitive. Yeah. And for me, it's actually easier to donate than it is to volunteer. I'm lucky. I know, and I'm lucky for that. I want a question for the executives. Can we start talking about policy before this data general stuff? Because I think, okay. So we're gonna do things a little out of order. So just a history, just to remind everyone, I know a lot of you already know this, but there was talks of DART budget cuts really as far back as May 24th this year. Dallas was considering cutting DART's funding to fill their pension. They mismanaged their pension. They needed money. They were looking towards DART. Plano on June 24th voted on a resolution to formally support DART budget cuts. And then the weeks after, the cities of Rowlett, Irving, Carrollton, Farmers Branch, and Highland Park would also vote on formal resolutions advocating for a 25% cut to DART's sales tax. However, recently, things have really shifted in our favor because it was not really all bad news for DART. Dallas recently voted on as a part of their legislative priorities to support full funding for DART and to protect, yeah. So we're not alone in this fight. And we've also found out recently that the cities of Dallas, Richardson, Garland, Addison, and Glen Heights are very pro-DART. There's actually a Richardson councilman who is going to testify in Austin. He's confirmed that against any legislation that would cut DART's funding. So we've kind of evened the playing field now. But really, it's not even because these cities way outnumber the cities that are anti-transit. Like Dallas population eclipses all those cities alone, and then you add Garland. You know. Wait.
Go back to that slide with the school. We'll see. I added the emoji.
Yeah. We're going to get back to the canvassing updates later. I want Mary to talk about that, and same for our upcoming events. So on October 4th, Plano hosted this meeting where they were going to talk about the legislative priorities regarding DART, and they invited all of the DART member cities and the DART board of directors. This meeting was not civil. Everyone was angry at each other, and it was a mess. We have the recordings. Maybe we should put it somewhere. It is quite something. But basically, it starts off with Councilman Williams of Plano going on this long presentation that's not really based in facts at all. And I'm going to demonstrate why. Just about how much we need to do something different with DART. And to him, do something different just means taking away their money. So he starts by saying DART's not reliable enough, it's not safe enough, it's not, it's not on time enough. And whether he's right or wrong, DART could always be more reliable, right? So that's a good, when you think that, you're like, all right, so what do you want to do about it? Well, no, his conclusion is to cut funding. He's just complaining about one time he tried to take an express bus on the DNT and it was late. It's probably late because the traffic on the DNT was so bad. Yeah, so he's also says that DART really needs fare gates and to be a closed system. Becoming a closed system is a huge capital cost. But I think what I want to get at here is that he's asking for two very contradictory things, right? He's asking for DART to have more security, to be more on time, to be more reliable, and to have more fare gates. And then he's also asking for their money. You can't do both. Ken?
Was a system like MARTA in Atlanta was building, and DC, in other words, a system with heavy rail and closed access, largely underground, and fare gates. That was before the voters. The voters turned it down. So the argument to say is, since the voters turned it down and they came up with another plan that the voters approved, what you're doing is you're not respecting the will of the voters.
Yeah, that's true. Voters voted down heavy rail and voted for light rail, which is regrettable, but yeah, I would have liked heavy rail, but that's okay. Here's another thing Shelby Williams said that I found interesting. He said, ridership is plummeting. People don't want to ride. That's a marketplace response. But I wonder if there's a graph exists that completely directly contradicts that. I wonder, do you guys think?
I wonder.
Yeah, oh, what's that? Ridership is increasing? That's one of the main bases behind this whole anti-DART talking points is that ridership is declining and no one wants to use it. This is 2024. That's 2023. This is 2021. It's gone up every year since the pandemic. To say ridership is plummeting it's just not true. There's no factual basis for that statement. It's the opposite. And I think all of you are experiencing that as you see your buses and trains slowly get more crowded over the years. I mean, I started riding in 2021 and yeah, it was pretty busy, but now the buses I ride are pretty active. So I went to Shelby Williams's website, which I don't recommend doing, but I did, and I found this interesting accomplishment. he is bragging about leading efforts for DART reform, for which we now have a multi-city coalition. So that means that this whole effort to cut DART's funding started with him. He is the source of it. So Shelby Williams of Plano, all it takes is one person to do a lot of damage. I want to talk about Rick Stouffer. He's the mayor of Irving. Irving's a very transit-dependent city, but he's one of the most anti-transit mayors. And he's on the DART board. Yeah. Mayor Stouffer is responsible for a lot of transit policy being on the DART board, and he hates DART. Yeah, a lot of you are confused, but this is true.
Somebody should do something.
So, and this I don't know, but at this meeting, the October 4th meeting, he was talking about how Grand Prairie only pays $4 million a year for their VIA system, which is a subsidized rideshare. Yeah, okay, you're all caught on to that. VIA sucks. He's talking about it as a genuine replacement for DART. So I looked at the data, as we do at Dallas Area Transit Alliance data. In August 2024, VIA Grand Prairie carried 433 people per day. So I checked the ridership on one bus route in Irving, just one. That one bus route I checked, and it's not even their highest ridership, it's like middle of the road, carried 900 people per day in August 2024. That's just one. That doesn't count the trains. It doesn't count like the other bus routes. My point is that he's advocating for this pulling out of DART and just paying for people's Uber rides. That kind of system is mathematically impossible for it to meet Irving's transportation needs. If the whole city of Grand Prairie can't match the ridership of even one DART bus route, how are they going to match the ridership of their 2 rail lines? I think there's like 10 bus routes in Irving total, and all their GoLink. It's just not feasible. All right, I see a lot of hands up. Your hand has been up for a while. You want to comment on Irving?
Yes, so much.
So I live in Arlington, and I use used to now I e-scooter to the train station. But the point I'm making is I feel like we need to find ways to provide funding in order to either expand transit in Grand Prairie, Arlington, or maybe increase the TRE to 30 minutes, or just something to improve the current transit that we have needs to be done in order to make what we have better.
Yeah, because VIA is probably always like the wait times are unreliable. It's not scaling to the capacity very well because it's a Uber's type system. Oh, yeah.
You got a lot of stuff.
Okay.
We only have the room until the top of the hour, so you're
Yeah.
like really tight on
Do I even want to talk about this slide? Okay. So at the end of this meeting, Adam Basildua of Dallas said that this was an emotionally driven conversation. It's very biased, and it was not collaborative with DART at the table to verify the information that Williams was presenting. And he's exactly right. Now I have good news. This might save us. There's a chance, and I really want to get the room's input here. There's a chance that Plano's proposal to cut DART's funding might be like illegal. You're nodding your head. Okay, I would like to.
I was just wondering, when it first came in, I don't remember there being a clause where this was ever presented, that they would be able to pull,
Well, we're going to talk about what they're going to do. So their proposal is to create a mobility fund that lets cities take up to 25% of their sales tax contribution to DART and spend it on roads instead. It's called the General Mobility Fund, but I say it should really be called the Money Stolen from Public Transportation Fund. That's what it is. And if any money that's not taken out of this fund, so it'd be the city's choice to take up to 25% of their sales tax contribution per year. And any money that doesn't take just has to be used to pay bond debt. So it can't even go to like bus service or anything. So that's their like legislative proposal. There's other things like I've heard that they might force DART to refinance their debt, which would cost like hundreds of millions of dollars. But on October 10th, The former CEO of DART published an opinion piece on the Dallas Morning News titled, "DART Funding Dispute is Going Nowhere." He makes the claim that the Texas State Legislature cannot provide Plano relief from their obligation to DART. Now, the simple reason for this is because DART has issued bonds backed by that 1% sales tax rate. And I'm not a bond expert, but my understanding is that like that contract is kind of violated if you just cut DART's funding before those debts are paid off. And that wasn't like when they chose to buy that debt or buy those bonds from DART, they did it with the understanding that there'd be 1% sales tax. So as soon as you lower it, you've violated the Constitution, because apparently the Texas Constitution is very clear about bond covenants. So he said, should this legislature attempt to modify an existing bond covenant, it would trigger concerns among virtually all local government debt issuers in Texas, especially so among institutional investors who purchase DART funds and rely upon their assured repayment. What Plano is asking for DART to do is break its contracts, ignore the concerns of its creditors, and start a cascading crisis of public finance. Yeah. So then the question is, could Plano leave DART? The answer is yes. But first, the citizens would have to approve it. So city council can't act on that. Second, if Plano left DART, their sales tax would still have to go towards DART for 15 years. So they wouldn't have that money for 15 years because they cannot get out of their bond obligations. However, also due to Texas state law, for those 15 years, they would not have DART service, which means if Plano wanted to leave DART under the way it works right now, they would be paying for no service for 15 years, which would be a colossal waste of money. In other words, Plano's not getting out of those bonds. But I want thoughts from the room. I want opinions from. All right, let's start with you in the back.
Okay, just so we're clear how this works, I'm gonna hold the mic and then you're gonna talk into it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Since it was a Jewish holiday on October 4th, how many residents came to the council meeting at Plano? I was just curious how many residents came to propose to protect DART.
It was live streamed, but I don't think it was open to the public to be present in the room. Yeah, this wasn't like a council meeting per se.
That's the only reason we know about it.
Yes. So I want to know if anyone has any thoughts about like the bond issues specifically. Me personally, I just want to say, I don't think this means that we give up our fight just because this article came out and said it's impossible. I think there's still potential for Plano to do damage, and we still need to be calling our state reps, emailing them every chance we get, voting for state reps who are pro-DART. Yeah, go.
Do we have a position in data for researching on law? If we don't,
We have policy research.
Okay.
Are we going, can we get in contact with this former DART CEO?
Oh. Yeah, his name was, someone can pull up the article for me.
Okay, we got one more.
I believe Jason stated that the DART CEO may come to a future meeting. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, Nadine Lee wants to come to one of these. Yeah.
That's not the name.
David Leininger. Yeah.
I think the main thing that we need to be aware of is the tack that Plano is taking is like, oh, we want DART to pay off its debt faster. So something that they could be like doing to try and like, oh no, we're not breaking the bond covenant. We're just making it get repaid faster. We should probably be aware of that angle that they might take.
Yeah.
Considering like the whole, like, you know, oh, whatever doesn't get taken out of this fund has to go to the debt. And that's how they're going to like try and get around that. But it still remains like true that this would set a dangerous precedent that at any time, any city who has issued for any project a municipal bond for like a school or for their roads or for their police department or for their city hall or something like that, at any time, a city could just go crying to the legislature to say, we want to get out of this bond covenant that we signed on and agreed on. So like, I think we should just like really emphasize how dangerous of a precedent it is to go ask the legislature to change how a bond gets repaid.
Yeah.
Hi, first of all, I think David Eledinger is, or however you say it, is a chief financial officer. Gary Thomas was the CEO.
He was an
But then-
interim CEO.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, right, interim, okay. That's not what, that was just that was a parenthetical thing. I participate by phone onto the monthly COG meetings, the Central Texas Council of Governments. And somebody, I don't know if this person is in the room, was there in person in Arlington. And they had a wonderful presentation on how, the reduction of funding would be detrimental. And the response from the COG person was that there are people at COG who are trying to advocate for DART, and they probably know a lot about these rules that we're talking about here, and that they are trying to get it so that it won't make it to the state legislature. So a good resource would be at COG. I don't know who the person is, and if this person who spoke at the meeting is in this room, I think they were given additional information as far as contacts at COG.
You're talking about David. I do not see David in the room. David, yeah. Yakubian, yeah.
Whoa, I'm gonna hold this. And then
I was just going to say, don't be too confident that they can't withdraw from DART, because we've already had several cities withdraw from DART in
That
the
was
history,
before DART issued debt, though.
perhaps. But Fort Worth has also had some cities that have withdrawn. And what it looks like is they negotiate a new deal, kind of like North Richland Hills, where they continue to get service. They're no longer part of the program, and they pay them a certain amount of money. So that's what it looks like.
All right, after this question, I probably gotta move on to the next.
So first of all, excellent research, guys. Clearly our policy person is just knocking it out of the park.
He's done a lot of good research too, but this was,
Yeah. So my very quick comment is that, how do we use this information? I would say when you guys talk to your state reps, make sure that when they ask, why is this important? Still make sure you answer the question of why with all this the original messaging of we need transit, it's important, all those good human stuff. Make sure you don't use this information as the reason for why. You use the information that was presented to prove that the opposition is incompetent. Like if they are going off of the assumption that the people who are trying to cut funding are smart and know what they're doing is best for the region and best for their cities, this is the evidence that that's not true. This is the evidence of they're incompetent. We shouldn't just take their word for it that we could cut funding. But that's the question of how we answer the question of how. Make sure that you still keep the why, because, and the reason I make that point is because if they change this, right, there's still several months before the session starts, and they may pull a fast one and say, okay, we're going to make this proposal better, whatever. Whether they make the proposal better or not, at the end of the day, we got to stay focused on public transit is important. Here's why. And so just want to make sure we use this information the best of its ability.
To be clear, the information about this bond restructuring and everything is also in our email that we are having everybody send to the state reps. So it is in there too.
Oh yeah, so if you're confused by it, don't worry too hard about it.
This is our last question for this topic, so we gotta move on. Sorry, Ara. You can message me on Discord later.
Okay. So Warren?
This is no, Hexel's was the last.
Oh, sorry.
I'm saying he can message me later. He knows how to reach me. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's all good. State legislative update. a lot of you have been calling your reps. I and several others have been going through that list of people who signed up and texting them and bothering you to call your state reps. I'm curious, how many in this room have either emailed or called a state rep recently? Whoa. Let's keep that up. So I just kind of wanted for us to come back, and if any of us have heard back, just kind of figure out what's being said. Royce West, for example, a lot of you called him. I'm just kind of curious, what all did you hear from him? Anyone who called Royce West and heard back or emailed him? No? Okay. So you. Oh, he's hard to reach? Okay. That office is, yeah, that's one thing we're finding out. Some offices are more difficult than others. But from what I know about Royce West, I believe he's going to be pro DART and we don't have to worry about him. But we should definitely keep, if you're his constituent, definitely keep it up. I talked to Mihila Plesa. She was awesome. Strong DART advocate. She's in a pretty competitive race. And she represents Plano, Richardson, and Dallas. But I called her staff. They told me that she's very aware of this issue. She's very concerned about it. And on November 11th, she plans on filing some pro-DART legislation, kind of in response. So, again, as election comes up, I know a lot of you are in this district because I know a lot of you go to UTD. Just something to think about. I'm not officially endorsing, but something to think about. Bob Hall. I talked to Bob Hall. I live in his district. I didn't talk to him. I talked to a staffer. The staffer said he's been hearing a lot about DART. No doubt thanks to people in this group. And probably people outside the group too. Because I think I was the first one to call him in the group. But the staffer told me that it's unlikely, from what he knows about Bob Hall, that this would even be something he cares about, because most people in his district live they don't have it he represents Terrell, Sulphur Springs, and they don't really, his constituents aren't going to be helped if they forcefully cut DART's funding. And he said he's going to want to maintain the status quo for DART, which is the best we can ask for right now. So, and Bob Hall's not up for re-election right now, but I definitely want to keep contacting him. He said that he wasn't going to give me an official stance until the legislation is filed. So we're going to keep tabs and we're going to hope that he's going to be against this legislation. Excellent.
Isn't a large part of his Senate district served by Star Transit? And is there any potential impact on Star Transit for this legislation?
Only in that Star Transit connects to DART. And if DART's hurt, that could be bad. If you go to Rowlett Station, you'll see Star Transit vehicles dropping people off, actually. Yeah, so let's keep them up. I know a lot of you are in Bob Hall's as well, because a lot of you are Richardson.
Yeah, I was just gonna expand on that. The statute that governs DART and Trinity Metro, I believe it's 452, is completely separate than 451, which is Urban Rapid Transit that Cat Metro in Houston operates under, as well as rural and urban transit districts, which I believe are 456 and 457. So all I have to say is anything that would affect DART, possibly Trinity Metro, would not affect, at least directly, these rural and urban transit authorities.
Yeah, but we can just hope that we can convince these people to not want to touch. Oh, Brenda. Or were you just stretching?
No. Oh yes. If Mihila Plaza loses, she can file her legislation, but if she's not there in January, does it just die, or what happens to it?
I have no clue.
Okay. Pray for her.
So Tan Parker, we haven't really heard anything definitive yet. So, you know, we know his opponent at least is very pro-Dart. So he kind of danced around the issue when we called him, or his staffer did.
So I called Tan Parker and I was like, hey, like, don't cut Dart. And he was like, his staff was like, well, Plano, they spend so much money and they don't get as much service, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I understand their argument, but you can't just kill it. Like, I don't know what to tell you. And he was like, I was like, I'm really worried that they're just gonna cut everything and then Dart service is gonna be really bad. I really don't want to happen. And they were like, well, we're gonna make sure Dart still exists. So
Oh, okay. So that's not very good.
that's the conversation I had. Take what you want from that. They were definitely dancing it around, but
I'm not a fan of that response. Like when I talked to Michaela Place, I know I'm mispronouncing her name. I'm sorry. She was like very adamant. Her staff was very adamant that she's a very strong Dart advocate, and that's what I'm hoping to hear from our state reps when we call them in. So that's very concerning to me. Thank you for sharing. Morgan Meyer, did anyone get in contact with Morgan Meyer? He's been hard to reach. Yeah, no one has. Unfortunate. I hope to get a Dart stance from him. He represents Preston Hollow, Highland Park, and like Uptown and Oaklawn. Yeah. Oh yeah, the median home value in its district is like $500,000. District 108. Oh. Yeah, his office is on McKinney Avenue, actually. Yeah, so if anyone could, that would be great, because I'd love to know his stance, but yeah, he's been hard to reach. His office has been hard to reach, unfortunately. Same for Angie Chen Button. I think we sent a lot of emails to her at this point, and we've gotten no response. Actually, someone, Avery Bishop's gonna come in a few minutes, should be actually to speak. But unfortunately, we haven't gotten any input from her, which I want to know her stance, but. And Angie, but I want both. I want to know both. I mean, you know, it's an election up. We got to know their stances. And so, yeah, but Angie's not, hasn't reached out. We haven't heard from her. She was, correct. But that doesn't mean she's gonna, yeah. So as we know, there is a Dart board member who literally wants his city to leave Dart.
yeah. And Avery Bishop, he'll be here.
Okay. So if this, just wondering, did anyone else contact a state rep that was not mentioned here? And did they hear anything that I didn't already say about them? Yeah.
Oh, he's not very much competitive. Very not Dart. Like people think he's not Dart.
So we are expecting Matt Shaheen to be the one who files the legislation to cut Dart's funding in the House. And do you know who we're expecting to file that legislation in the Senate? Now, I have no evidence of this, but I would bet like $1,000 on this. I think it's going to be Angela Paxton who files the legislation to cut Dart's funding. So I would bet money on it being Matt Shaheen on the House and Angela Paxton in the Senate. All right, so we have an Action Network link. Who has filled out the Action Network? This will send an email to your state reps for you. It's super easy, and obviously, you know, this is a pretty cool thing to do. You can still try to call them or send them a personal email, but go ahead and scan the QR code. It's just a super easy way to get some pro Dart. emails sent to their district office or just their office, probably their capital and district office. So yeah, this is free. It's super quick. Warren.
Sorry.
I was say the other cool thing is it'll start you with a bunch of verbiage that some of the folks in here wrote, but you can change it so you can personalize it. So you don't have to start from scratch, but also have something that's not just a form letter.
Funny story, we had somebody send our email and then use our form to ask their legislators for an internship. So
Did it work?
I don't know.
Basically, tell your story. Tell your story in that email. There's some lines that just put these lines in and tell your story.
Okay. All right.
I have a question about this. So my current House representative is Julie Johnson. However, she's running for a higher office and there's nobody available in her office. And I know that Cassandra Hernandez is going to be running, but the election is not till November and they won't be sworn until January. And that's too late for all this legislation. And Tan Parker is my state senator and he is very hard to reach. I tried to reach him a long time ago about something else. It's a lost cause. So as far as the House part, what do you recommend? I mean, I don't think Cassandra is in the.
So I've
is the rep
spoken
now.
with Cassandra before. She is pro DART. She hates this effort to cut their funding. No. No, she's not running uncontested, but she's running in a very safe district. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, after November, there's going to be a lot of new people in office. Like my rep, Justin Holland, he's being replaced by someone. So I'm going to be contacting her if she wins. I don't know if she's in a competitive race or not. I need to check. Yes. Okay. Come on up, Mary.
Hi, I'm Mary Collier, for those who don't know me. So basically, we've had a couple events. I run the events for Data. We had a couple of canvassing events. We had canvassing at Northlake College in Irving, and also one in Plano. The issue we're having on weekdays is that we need to be at these stations at like 5 o'clock, but we are all adults with jobs. So if you are a person who maybe has a more flexible schedule or can leave work a little bit early on some days and would like to help us out, please let me know. I'm on the group me, so please just let me know or just like shoot a message out there in the ether and I'll catch it somewhere. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Got it. Okay, then we had a Fair Park canvas. We were there for the Red River rivalry, and we got 80 emails sent. So please thank Brenda's here, and then Matthias was there. There are only 3 of us who got 80 emails sent. So we really can make an effort. Actually, today we're going to the exchange after a meeting for just to have like lunch and stuff. If I could have a couple people do like 1 30-minute run with me canvassing, we could probably get another 80 emails sent because it's the last weekend of the fair. So if you're interested, please come and catch me. It'd be really, really helpful. We've got an event in Plano next Sunday at 1 p.m. And that's going to be more of a social event. So we're just going to hang out and explore downtown Plano. I'm doing a series where we explore all the downtowns. I don't think it works. Anyways, doing a series where we explore all the downtowns accessible by DART. Last thing, if you are interested in being more involved and would like to help plan events, I would love some help. So come find me, shoot a message out there in the ether on our group me, and I would love some help. So if you're interested in being more involved, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah, she's Mary on the group me. She's extremely helpful and has helped get so many emails out to like representatives. These are the upcoming events she's talking about. So if anyone wants to take a picture or date these down, go right ahead. I'll probably put them on social media as well. Oh my, I messed up. This is. Thank you. Good catch. Do not go to Carrollton on November 11th.
Well,
Or if you want to, if do not expecting this event. So, all right. We have our last speaker here for today. Would you like to come and introduce yourself and tell us what you're all about?
Hey y'all, thanks so much for having me. My name is Avery Bishop. I'm the Democratic candidate for Texas State House, District 112. It's North Dallas. It covers Richardson and Garland, and then it moves out east to Rockwall, Saxe, Mesquite, and Sunnyvale. It's considered one of the most competitive state house seats this year. We've raised about $1 million to flip it from red to blue. In fact, the Democratic Party was only 300 votes short from flipping it in the last presidential election cycle. We plan to flip it this year in November with help from organizations like yours. I come from a working class family. My dad was a public school bus driver, and my mom's an immigrant maid from the Philippines. And they taught me to work hard, and they provided me a fair shot here in Texas. And as I succeeded, graduated first in my family from college, first in my family from law school, then served as Miss Texas, I experienced a lot of success, but I also saw a lot of inequities in our state as I traveled about 70,000 miles. I saw a severe lack in access to public transportation, as you might see across our state of Texas. I also saw how there's a lack of housing accessibility and a lack of opportunity for working families like the one that I came from. That's why I am running for office. I am not 18. Some people think I'm still in high school for some reason. I guess I look very young, but I am young. I'm 28. I'm one of the youngest women running for office in Texas. In addition to wanting to provide a fair shot for every Texan, I'm also running for office because I believe it's time for the next generation to step up and to serve. The average age of a representative in Texas, can anybody guess? Very close. It's 59 here in the state of Texas. And we appreciate our wise older generations, but we also, as the young generation, can provide very unique perspectives at the decision-making table. For example, I'm a real human. I had to work a full-time job while I have been campaigning for the past year. I also have to pay rent. I cannot afford to own a home. I'm paying off student loans. I'm in the middle of family planning. I experience inflation just as much as you do here real time on the real ground. And a lot of our lawmakers are just far removed from some of the issues that we're experiencing here in our communities. District 112, again, is considered tier 1, which is just a fancy way of saying that it is very competitive and that there's a lot of investments, especially from labor unions, for example. We had a Block Walk labor union launch this morning with over 75 brothers and sisters who joined us here in North Texas. And I hope to earn your vote and your support. With your help, you'll help me make history. I'll be the first Filipino to serve and represent the Filipino community in Texas. And I'll also be the youngest woman to serve ever in the history of the Texas legislature. I am just as well experienced, well spoken, and well educated as my opponent, who has been in her seat for 2 decades. It is way too long. And something that I would like to push forward when I'm elected is campaign term limits so that we can bring in some fresh perspectives through mandatory means and make sure that everyone is equitably represented. So that's a little bit about me. I'm happy to take maybe 2 or 3 questions if you're interested so that I can touch base on any specific policy issues. I know you guys do public transportation, so happy to answer questions around that. Any?
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Is that a mic? What is that?
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
mic for the people
I was like,
online.
I'm speaking into a room.
No, there's some people join these meetings virtually.
Okay.
So what we we formed very recently, maybe a few months ago, because there started to be this push to cut DART's funding by 25%. So, oh, you're shaking your head. We are obviously big fans of DARTs. A lot of us rely on DART, or a lot of us just use it because we don't want to deal with the Dallas traffic, right? So I wanted to know, what are your thoughts on this effort to cut DART's funding? Are you aware, and if Plano were to file legislation, I say were as if it's possible, they're going to do it. How would you react to it as a member of the House?
I don't believe in cutting the very abysmal amount of money DART is already receiving in Texas. I believe that as a state representative, I hope to push to increase actually the percentage in which you receive funding to expand DART. I live in North Dallas, so I have the Addison DART station behind me, and I take it downtown to my work here, which is off of Ruth Street over by the DMA. I love DART. I do believe that we need to expand it as quickly as possible, especially as our demographics are growing here in North Texas. A lot of people are coming here and they just don't want to drive cars. A lot of our lawmakers are actually financed by the car lobby. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's essentially dark money from car companies that want to incentivize lawmakers to take gifts and donations to continue to make it difficult to expand public transportation in Texas. I've sworn off taking those contributions. I don't need them. I was able to raise grassroots donors. So I look forward to making sure to protect against cutting any of the percentages of funding that you guys may receive for DART. I think right now it's like 1% of the sales tax, which is 8.25% here in the state of Texas. I would love to incentivize local municipalities to increase that percentage by giving them a tax credit. Yes. Obviously, that will be hard to push because as a Democrat, I will be playing defense often in the state capitol. But we're in the long game, right? So if you flip my seat, we have a few more Democrats that flip the seat. We'll be able to have a coalition. So hopefully see that in the next 2 or 3 years.
Are we? So what's? Let me see.
Okay. What's the question? Say it again.
We need a moment.
Oh, sure. Go ahead. Yeah, of course. One more up here from Hexel. Hi, Hexel. Hexel and I are good friends.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for saying it on the record. I feel like really bad for not appearing at your events before.
No, it's okay. You need to come block walk with me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for real. Because I've been telling you, oh, I know Avery, we're friends. I promise.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a question that we asked one of the other reps here, which is that funding for DART, increasing it, right? So right now we're trying to fight against cuts to it. I made a point for one of the other reps that right now, 70% of DART funding comes from sales tax, like you mentioned. The remaining 15-20% comes from federal funding, federal grants, little things here and there, but 0% from the state. So this summer, Abbott's governor's office approved $100 billion for highway expansion, highway maintenance, highway widening. And do you see opportunities, certain state funding opportunities to put more money towards transit over highway and road infrastructure, which is
Yeah,
where it all goes?
Absolutely. There's always potential there. Right now, we're in a $33 billion economic surplus. We also have a $23 billion rainy day. It's just like a jar of extra money that we've earmarked in place from additional money that we've saved over the course of a couple of years. Now, the rainy day savings jar is dedicated to emergency situations. So I would see that funding going towards our public schools first before it goes to public transportation. But I do believe that we can do a combination, dare I say, of property tax. So instead of just 70% from sales tax and then a combination from federal, I think we should mix in some property tax and then have a dedicated state fund. Like a grant, for example, a transportation-oriented department grant, so a TOD, and be able to not only levy property tax, but also combine it with some of the state funding dedicated to public transportation. Can we pass that anytime soon? Again, we're in the long game. If I were to flip my seat, continue to present those types of legislation on the House floor, we'll be able to gain momentum and hopefully pass that in the next coming sessions.
So I guess kind of following along that question and that train of thought, as your potential, your potential or your district currently covers a lot of what is still kind of relatively suburban, urban area. And I'm sure you're talking about property taxes right now, potentially supporting it. How do you plan to advocate within your own district to your constituents or future constituents about the necessity for DART as well as maybe increased densification within North Dallas?
I always speak about public transportation as a human right. I believe that being able to transit yourself anywhere at any time is a right that we should all have and it should be protected. One of the greatest ways that we can break ourselves away from cyclical poverty, inequities is through transportation. So whenever I have conversations with, say, a property owner in a wealthy to-do suburban neighborhood of Richardson, and Richardson does not have a DART, I would tell them, hey, I benefited from being able to use the DART when I was in college and law school, and look what I've become. Because I had access to transit, to public transportation, which was affordable, I was able to get to where I needed to become the person that I was destined to be. Whenever you frame it that way, especially in my district, which is a combination of usually high education, high socioeconomic status families in Richardson and Garland, they tend to lean more towards supporting public transportation when I frame it as a human right. And that when people are able to access transit and get to church, get to the grocery store, get to their job, get to daycare, get to wherever they need to go, it's going to mutually be beneficial for our entire community when people can get to where they need to go without congesting and increasing traffic. I think he has a question now. You ready?
How are you gonna deal with the Carl Mendelssohn's NIMBYism? Can you
repeat it?
How are you gonna?
Like not in my backyard.
Oh.
Don't worry about it.
Oh. You really want to kick us out? Okay.
Okay.
So I guess what he's trying to say is, like, say take Sunnyvale.
Mhm.
I know people from Sunnyvale, they will riot if you even put in like a traffic circle, which they have.
Uh-huh.
You know that traffic circle.
Yes, I do.
So how do you deal with that kind of mindset is the question.
I would give them some alternatives, right? I don't think that we're going to be able to see a lot of the change we want to see very quickly, especially with urban planning and public transportation. It's going to take time to get to where we want to be. So I would offer incremental changes in their specific districts. So say for Sunnyvale, if they're like, I don't want the entire DART station coming out all the way out here. I don't want my money going towards the DART station. I don't even use the DART station. Then why don't we implement like incentivized car-free zones in dense urban areas in Sunnyvale? Right? Can we dedicate certain areas of Sunnyvale, close it off, and ensure that those businesses that are around those specific roads and streets are able to be receiving tax credits whenever we shut them down and make them a dense urban area dedicated to car-free zones, and allowing people to use it as, say, like event spaces, and somehow changing the culture in those small incremental ways. We can convince Sunnyvale. Sunnyvale will take time, but we got to chip at it. So I would offer alternative options, such as the one that I just said. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Going back to what you said about like with business integration and like how DART and public transit has so much benefit for businesses around the area. What do you have to say about how, I mean, other systems, like, I don't know if New York has this system where local businesses, they are on DART or public transit property. And so people can, on their transit trips, they patronize public businesses. They add to the economic development in the area. What do you have to say about doing something similar or keeping with that frame of mind in more suburban areas like DART?
I am obsessed with mixed use commercial projects. Okay, like it keeps me up at night. I literally binge watch videos of like mixed urban commercial use, but absolutely, I spent a year working in New York, and I always look forward to using the public transportation because when you would go underground, a lot of these stations would have like coffee shops and grocery stores. And why would we not want to incentivize small businesses and merge two really important things that will only grow our communities here in North Texas, which is public transportation and commerce? Why would we not combine those two? So I definitely would want to encourage, as we create new projects and development through DART, to create that mixed use type of establishment and development, and obviously incentivize small businesses to be there by providing them some sort of incentive to rent out those spaces. Absolutely.
Real quick, I'm pretty sure they had like a mixed use underground walkway in Dallas.
They do, yes.
There used to be a lot of stores that were open there, but I think due to the lack of use for it, they closed down a lot of those stores.
That's a whole, yeah, that's been there since the 80s, I think. It's been there for a while. It was popping when I was in high school. But now, yeah, oh, the 90s. Yeah, it is kind of, do you know what the word liminal space is? That's not to like ding on it, but it does give me liminal space vibes. But we definitely need to invest and research that. But that is also an example of what could potentially happen. But I think that's caused by a lot of urban sprawl. I think people just don't live in the city of Dallas anymore. They commute into the city and then they commute back out. So we can still invest in the mixed use up in like the suburban areas for sure, like Frisco. Yes. The job sprawl, yeah, there's also a job sprawl as well. A lot of the like huge companies are buying out land up in Prosper, which is where I went to school. And it used to be a really small town, less than 3,000 people. And now I think you were at my block walk this morning. Yeah, were you?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah. We made eye contact. I was like, hey, thanks for volunteering this morning. But yes, there's so much job sprawl in Texas, which again is a good reason to advocate for public transportation because we need to stay interconnected as we continue to move out and find affordable housing, which is another issue we can talk about on a different day.
Real quick, so there are going to be, assuming they do the same thing they did last session, there are going to be some pro-housing groups pushing legislation for minimum lot sizes, accessory dwelling units by right. So people are pushing for legislation on density by right and those type of affordable housing options at the state level.
Yeah.
Do you have a stance and would you support those type of legislation?
Well, I think I have to look into it a little bit more. Tell me where you would stand on those specific issues.
So I was part of a group that was lobbying in support of these because right now what happens is a lot of cities at the city level, the municipal level, their city code prevents for example, let's say you want to have a small, tiny house in your old historic neighborhood. Well, city code currently mandates minimum lot sizes that are massive. Like that's why we have so many back mansions and that kind of thing. And so there's legislation that would try to make the statewide minimum lot size something like what they have in Houston, which is like, I believe it was 2,000 square feet. So that way people have that choice, that freedom to have smaller homes if they wanted
I love
to.
the idea of choice. So absolutely. But yes, I unfortunately feel like that's a lot of power for local municipalities to have. But at the state level, as a legislator, I would absolutely love to introduce legislation similar to the one that is in Houston. I drove through there for a fundraiser a couple months ago, and their neighborhoods, there's like so many different types of houses. They've also built out a lot of projects too. And as we have the new generations grow up in Texas, we really don't want 6-bedroom, 12-bathroom houses that are worth like $2 million. We're looking for a small town home that might have 2 bedrooms and 1 bath. We don't need that much space. And I believe that those mandates that require you to have a larger home obviously disenfranchises a lot of individuals who cannot afford that amount of space. So I'd certainly support your legislation for sure. Anything else?
A couple minutes left. Yeah, so anybody who hasn't talked, have a question? Like for the last minutes, just if there's anything upcoming you want to promote about
Oh,
yourself,
yeah.
just like give us your final statement.
Absolutely. We have a lot of block walks coming up. Let me tell you, the current incumbent wants to likely not support public transportation. She's very much an extremist, not to like bring in a lot more social issues, but again, she's been in her seat for just far too long. And we've had 5 elementary schools shut down in our district from the lack of public school funding alone. The school voucher scam, if you have not heard about it, is going to siphon property tax, your money, public school funding away from our public schools and give it to already wealthy families to send their children to private institutions. So our incumbent is voting for school vouchers, and that's the major issue for my district specifically, as well as access to reproductive health care. Those are the 2 major issues from our recent polls. The third one is housing affordability and accessibility. That being said, I would love for you guys to join me and help me flip this district. Even if you don't live in District 112, when we flip my seat, Texas will move towards towards a more democratic, more diverse capital, which we absolutely need. And we have to make sure that at least the progressive ideology has a lot more House seats acquired before redistricting. Redistricting happens every census, and that will happen in 6 years. Okay, that is why we are in the long game. I talk about the big picture. And sometimes it feels like at the top of the ticket, you're like, who cares? I don't know. I don't really feel anything about either presidential candidate. Down the ballot, the state house races, we are the ones who are going to pass legislation that you will experience and be impacted by within 6 months. The legislation that's done at the federal level, you sometimes don't even feel until 4 years after the administration leaves. So make sure you vote all the way down the ballot. We have block walks pretty much every day. I will leave some of my little block cards with y'all, and there's a QR code on the back that you can scan and sign up. We really appreciate anyone who block walks. Our recent poll shows that we can flip the seat by a wide margin of 6 points, but only if we have people knocking on doors until Election Day. So thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, and I look forward to serving many of you when I'm elected in November.
Yeah, if we're all going to the Exchange, which is in the AT&T Plaza for like a lunch or dinner, so feel free to join us there.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
We're adjourned.
You guys are brilliant. I want to sit in, I want to sit in all the time.
First Saturday of every month.
Yeah, I did fill out.